Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I just finished watching episode 8 of Amazon Prime's The Rings of Power, and I gotta say, I actually enjoyed this finale. I really did. So we got a lot of revelations and a couple surprises, but then they turned out to be twists, and then it turned out to be the revelation that we thought it would be. So it starts off, we have our 3 mystery white-cloaked priestesses, and they have cornered the Comet Man, our stranger, and they're telling him, "You are our Lord Sauron," and it's like, what? Oh my god, I can't believe it. And they're like trying to bring back his memories, and they talked about like how there was one that cast you down, and that's why you're like, you lost your memories, and you're like beyond the veil and all that stuff. And so you're thinking like, okay, so you had, what was his name? The first orc? Is it Amar? Alar? Whatever his name is. You're like, okay, so he says that he killed Sauron, and so now Sauron had like a new body or something, and he lost his memories, right? So you're like, okay, that's crazy. I knew that the stranger was going to be someone. Everyone thought it was going to be Gandalf or some wizard, and now it looks like it's Sauron. And so they're giving him his memories back, and the Harfoots, you know, they were following him. They're trying to bring him back because they're like, oh snap, he actually did help. He brought all the trees and stuff back to life. You know, so right away I'm like, okay, well, I guess Sauron could do that if he wanted to, you know? And as they go and rescue him, they're fighting off the priestesses, and they're trying to stop him. And so Sauron, supposedly, he's fighting off the priestesses. You know, he's like using his powers as much as he can. He's like creating this wind vortex type thing, and you know, it's actually pretty cool. And they convince him to grab the staff of one of the the main priest lady, and he like banishes them away. And as they're leaving, you know, they turn into like that weird ethereal unseen world kind of form that they take when you put on the ring, and you see like everyone, you know, you see like the wraiths for what they are, you know. They take that kind of form, which is interesting because as far as I know, the wraiths are all the 9 kings of men, right? So I don't know what these people are supposed to be, but you know, it's cool looking. And then as he does that, they're like, oh, it's not Sauron, it's the Istari, the other one, you know. And so basically it's our confirmation that yes, this is a wizard. Now they do not call him Gandalf. They do not say that. Now I will say, for the rest of the episode, he says like 3 or 4 Gandalf lines, like direct quotes from Gandalf. So, you know, they're very heavily putting it on there that yes, this is Gandalf. Of course, there could always be another twist that this is actually Saruman, right? Because I think Saruman was supposed to be first. But again, my stance on this show has always been, this is not a one-to-one translation of any one set of books or anything like that. This is just a show that is taking inspiration from, the basics of like the Second Age or whatever, right? Like just like the MCU will take inspiration from certain comic arcs and comic major events, but it's never like an actual one-to-one translation of those events, like Civil War and all that other stuff, right? This is the same thing. So they're, perfectly within their rights to play fast and loose with the lore and change things around about how they happened and why they happened, because it's its own thing. It's not an adaptation. It's more of a inspired piece of media, I guess you could say. Anyways, so yeah, basically we figure out that this is a wizard, probably Gandalf, but they could always throw another twist in there. And he wants to go to this other realm, not realm, but this faraway place where they said that he, the 3 priests had said that he would gain his memories back when they thought he was Sauron. But he wants to journey and try to just figure out who he is and what's going on, right? And our lead, Harfoot, is going to go with him. So they say their goodbyes, and, she's off to an adventure, And so there you go. That's basically where that leaves off for that season. So big reveal, big like, okay, he was not Sauron. They were actually wrong. But I can see how they made the mistake. You know what I mean? Because it's like, if there's no wizards before this, and they see like, you know, they sense this real powerful guy, they're like, oh, that must be Sauron, right? So that totally makes sense. Now we get some interesting stuff over here. So basically, we have Galadriel returns to the Elven Kingdom, Erendi, I think that's what it was. And of course, we have Celebrimbor, who is trying to forge. At first, he's gonna forge like a crown, right? Because like he's like, okay, so we didn't get the Mithril that we needed. They said no, so we're gonna try to take the Mithril and we're gonna like fuse it with other metals like gold and silver and all this other stuff. And they have to keep trying this over and over again. And then here comes Halbrand, who's like, hey, I kind of dabbled in some smithery. Have you tried this? Have you tried this idea? And then it's like, oh, hey, it kind of works. Hey, cool. And so Celebrimbor and Halbrand kind of become buddy for a little bit. And he's like, mentioned things like, hey, have you tried this idea? And then he's like, oh, yeah, that works too. And Galadriel starts sniffing something strange. Start going like, you guys became friends fast. You're pretty useful all of a sudden when it comes to, smithing these things of power that we're trying to create here. Interesting. And so of course she's like looking for his family heritage, saying like, basically the entire reason why she thinks that he's the king of the Southlands is because he had this family crest. But it's like, back in the day, they didn't have like they didn't have what was that, 23andMe, right? They didn't have any kind of like family finding test that you could just take and prove who you were, so she basically asks one of her like historian buddies to be like, all right, can you go do some research on the family line and figure out exactly what happened and if this guy is who he says he is, which of course it turns out he's not. And real quick, I know that in the lore it's Sauron is supposed to take the form of this elf guy, or I forget his name, but he's supposed to have an elven form, and that's the person who becomes friends with Celebrimbor and convinces him to do this and that with the rings and make all this, and that's how it all starts. I get that, but again, this is not a one-to-one translation. This is like just inspired by that that story, really. So yes, it's Halbrand. It's revealed that he is not who he says he is, and he's pretty upfront about it. He's like, I've had a lot of names. I've been around since before time was being recorded, and so she's like, damn it, it is Sauron this whole time. And he puts her in some kind of like mind thing where like she's going past through all the events of the show so far, and he's just talking to her and messing with her and making her see her brother and all this other stuff. And then he disappears. He's gone. And so she runs back up to the tower and saying like, okay, all right, you know what, he's gone, don't trust this guy. But she doesn't tell them. She doesn't say anything about Sauron. Like, oh yeah, that guy who was in the room with us like an hour ago, he was Sauron the whole time. She doesn't say that to him. And I don't know why she doesn't bring this up. And I don't know if it's like she's trying not to cause a panic and she just wants these rings of power to be made. But anyways, she's like, okay, make 3 of them. That way, if one of them gets corrupted or 2 of them, whatever, then 3 is a balance. Make 3 rings for us, and it's gonna stay in elven hands, and we're all gonna be cool. Which that is the way it's supposed to go, right? Like it's supposed to be like the elves get 3, and then the dwarves get this, and then the men get this, and only then does Sauron create the One Ring, which is supposed to enslave everyone, right? So yeah, basically it ends with them creating the 3 rings, and we know Galadriel gets one, and I don't remember who gets the other 2. I don't know if Elrond ever actually gets one or not. But in any case, so she's keeping this all a secret. Elrond finds the family scroll. He doesn't say anything either, but he finds it, and so it's pretty sure that like, okay, so he knows. He figured this out. They're like, oh, Halbrand was not who he said he was. That's weird. And then we see Sauron kind of going back to Mordor, making his plans. He's got to take out that orc guy, right? Because that's like his enemy, And then he'll be in charge of the orcs again. And it'll just be him and Mordor and orcs. And, we'll have our setup for Sauron as he's supposed to be. I assume he'll take a different form. Now we do get a little bit of Numenor, but I'll be honest, it was just like the queens there. They returned to Numenor. I don't know if part of it was destroyed or what exactly I was looking at. But I'll be honest, the Numenor plotline's like the least interesting one. You know, they still think Isildur is gone, which is like, come on, whatever. Anyways, it doesn't matter. The Numenor plotline does not matter. I'm sorry, but like, I feel like that's one where it's like, we know Isildur's fine. We know the people of Numenor, or at the very least, Isildur's dad is gonna come back and, you know, join up against Sauron. Like so all of this other part seems kind of pointless. But yeah, you know, big reveals, big things happening. There wasn't like a whole lot of action, but it was pretty cool seeing the stranger. Like he was momentarily having a staff. He was using the evil person staff, but he was having a staff, and you can see like, okay, so the wizard stuff is starting to happen, and the rings are being made, and the Sauron reveal was finally just revealed. Like that's not going to be a thing in the show moving forward, right? So yeah, I was actually pretty happy with this. For a second, I thought maybe Sauron had divided himself, and he was both the stranger and Halbrand. But no, he's just Halbrand the whole time. Now, look, I was not in the camp of Halbrand is Sauron. I was not there. A lot of people were, but I was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. But even the show kind of like walked through it, because Galadriel was like, no, but you saved me, and Halbrand's like, actually, you saved me. And so they kind of like had this whole back and forth where he kind of points out that like, everything I did was in the interest of Sauron, which is interesting. He wanted to stay in Numenor, and I wonder how that would have helped Sauron. Not really sure. But in any case, yeah, I was perfectly happy with this ending. The season overall, it definitely feels like you could condense a lot of these plot lines, especially the Numenor stuff. Like that was just such the weakest part of this. If this had been just like a 4-episode event and you condensed all these events into like 4 episodes, I feel like it would have been much, much stronger. But you know what? They're already in production of season 2. Like that's already like they're already filming it and everything. So this is gonna be a series. Like this is gonna be a thing moving forward. Who knows how many seasons? But hey, I enjoyed the finale. I enjoyed the episode before last. So yeah, I don't know. I had a fun time with it. I do feel like it ended up paying off, but you had to have patience to get there, because there was a lot of like build up and build up and build up and build up, and then they finally paid it off. And the ending, I think, was worth it, especially moving forward. I do feel like if they stick with Sauron and Galadriel and Elrond and the rings of power, and like if you stick mostly with this, and then you go like to the wizard and all that, like these are your strongest points. Like I'm sorry, but like the elf soldier and the lady in the Southlands, it doesn't feel like you have anywhere to go with that. Like they don't, maybe you can have the elven soldier join up with Galadriel when they finally are gonna move against Sauron and the war is starting, right? Like that's where he can come into place. But like as far as their whole thing, like the rest of that, it feels like that's over, right? Like so, and then the Numenor is boring. I'm sorry, but the queen and then her dad is sick, and they got the Palantir there, and they have like the vision of Numenor being destroyed, and I'm just like, I don't care about this. I'm sorry, I just don't. Like, get everyone back to Middle Earth. I don't know why you went back to Numenor. Get back to Middle Earth, find Isildur, team up with the elves. Let's start this. Let's do this. You know what I mean? So I don't know. As of right now, I enjoyed the ending. It does feel like, again, this could all be condensed, and we still have a Balrog to deal with. They didn't deal with that this season, so next season, the dwarves are gonna be getting that mithril out probably, and it's gonna be like, oops, Balrog, so that will happen at some point. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this final episode and the season overall, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.